Hello and welcome to Top Hat Chat with myself, Street, the Top Hat Gaming Man, and Orb. There is three of us today, as there have been for a few of our videos actually, because we're kind of recording on a slightly different format. We're actually recording this while we're live. Yeah, you're such an aggravating man.
Why? Because I say live all the time.
You scream in my ear.
Well, it's necessary sometimes.
It's horrendous for mastering audio.
Decibels.
Just saying. Right, so today we are live on Twitch, and yeah, this is going to be recorded and popped out on YouTube later on for you guys.
Yes, so we have a fantastic question from one of our Patreon benefactors who supports the Top Hat Trust. So what is their question?
Yeah, we have a question from Ben Sainty.
Hello, Ben Sainty.
He says, could we discuss what we think is the most important innovation in gaming and why?
Whatever?
Yeah, ever. Which is very vague, but also it's quite an interesting question, I think.
Yes.
I think I don't know where to start with this. I suppose. I mean, what kind of innovations can we think of that have happened in gaming?
I personally would go straight for the Genesis. And when I say the Genesis, I'm not talking about the...
You mean the Mega Drive?
No, not the butchered name for the Mega Drive, which they say in some offshore colonies of the UK.
Okay.
But in fact, the genesis of gaming, which I believe took place... Well, electronic gaming took place in a university some years ago in the 1960s, I believe, with some game which they potentially made using radar equipment, or am I making stuff up?
Yeah, no, I believe it was radar equipment.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's really cool. Yeah. So that's actually I don't know very much about.
Tennis game.
Was it a tennis game, or was it a game? It was like a sort of space shootery thing.
I remember the tennis one where it sort of bounced back and forth on the radar screen. It was like an early version of Pong.
Oh, okay.
But without the paddles. It was really weird.
That is really odd.
In my head, I remember it being a space shooter, but a bit like Asteroids.
You have been wrong 12 times.
I have been wrong a lot tonight. So I'm sure someone will be able to clear this up in the comment section who's right or wrong on this one.
Or can at least research for us.
Yes.
So how did this control?
Don't know. I'm not from the 1960s.
So you have dials.
There we go. See, thank you. Somebody knows.
Somebody does know.
Yeah, which is good. So basically, it's like a primitive, super primitive Pong machine.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, I suppose. I think that's actually a really hard thing to argue with, because the birth of gaming, I suppose, is the biggest innovation.
It's the gaming Big Bang.
Yeah,
everything's just expanded from there and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So when are we going to have the gaming crunch then? Do you think?
Arguably, we've had several contractions already.
When?
Well,
we have the great
stateside computer game contraction.
You mean the North American regional Atari crash?
That's why I said the stateside computer game contraction.
Yeah.
Didn't call it the video. Didn't call it the video game.
Yeah, but crash. the whole gaming universe isn't contracting, is it? It's just it's like a planet blowing up, essentially. I would say, like Alderaan, for example.
Is it? Are you just trying to like continue the space shooter vibe from the start of this video? It's like space, just space, everything's space.
Everything is space.
So I can end up saying the word Palpatine.
Yeah, Sheath. Everyone loves Sheath Palpatine. I know him on a first-term basis.
Okay, so I mean, I think it's really hard to argue that isn't the biggest innovation in gaming. But what other innovations have we seen in gaming? I mean, we've been playing tonight a lot of games by Nintendo.
Yes.
And we all know that they are the biggest innovators in gaming, aren't they?
No. Yeah.
No, of course they're not. With great innovations such as the handle. And
people call them innovative, but Nintendo themselves admit they're not innovative. They are the kings of repurposing old technology and using it in... What would be a good word for what they do with it? Repurposing old crap and making it somewhat relevant.
You literally just worded it about as well as you can.
I suppose so, yes.
So what innovations have they had then? Come on, let's
well, they're not innovations. They are.
Okay. So what innovations have they
repurposed? What have they repurposed?
Yeah.
They made the most effective use out of motion controls out of all of the big consoles.
That's a good shout.
Years after the likes of the U-Force.
Yeah, but as I said, they made the best use of it.
Yes. There's not really innovation, is it?
That's what we were just saying. They're not innovative. They're good at repurposing.
Obviously, the Game Boy screen as well. That was very old technology.
Yeah.
And, they made that. When you look at like the Game Gear and the Lynx and the PC Engine GT, which all come out at roughly the same time, and it's leagues behind, but they managed to make the most profit off the back of it. Even though it was very primitive.
Multiple screens.
Multiple screens.
That's an innovation. Or a repurposed innovation from someone else.
Yeah. I have no idea who did that first. I know they obviously did it with their Game & Watch devices in the early 80s, but I don't know if they was the first to do that. They could have been, but I'm sure there must have been other devices with more than one screen. Maybe not handheld gaming devices, because that does sound like a bit of a stretch.
Yeah. I'm thinking the Wii U
But
as
even
well.
that, they didn't invent those screens. They were first used in gaming with the MB Microvision. That's the granddaddy of all handheld gaming devices.
Yeah.
And they took the technology from the Microvision and made the Game & Watches.
What about three-handed controllers?
Three-handed controllers. Were they the first to do three-handed controllers?
I think there must have been. I can't think of any others.
Three-handed controller.
Yeah, the
but
N64.
Nintendo 64,
Yeah.
you need three hands to use it, don't you?
Your middle hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your missing middle
That
hand.
could be an innovation there as well.
There we go, see?
Three-handed controller. They certainly didn't invent the analog stick because obviously the Vectrix has got an analog stick, and that was in the early 80s.
It's a terrible
Also
analog
by
stick.
MB, so they just rip off MB all the time.
Yeah.
Good old Milton Bradley from Boston, Massachusetts.
There we go.
Speaking of Milton Bradley, here's another fact as well. Did you know there was a board game manufacturer? Yes, you're familiar with Milton Bradley?
MB Games. Yeah.
MB Games. So they was a board game manufacturer, and they started life manufacturing board games. But then in the American Civil War, they just became a weapons manufacturer instead, and were selling weapons.
That sounds like how Acme become invented.
But then they realised that they could make more money by simply selling their board games to soldiers, so they just went back to board games.
That's an odd transition. so we're making Moustache. That's a good seller. We're making Monopoly, and then they're like, weapons, actually.
Yeah.
Weapons is probably the way to go. They sell some rifles and they go, board games was better than this. Let's go
That's
back
exactly
to board
what
games.
happened. That's exactly what happened.
That's so bizarre.
Yeah.
It
Maybe
is.
maybe like other companies could do that now.
And because of this company, selling board games and weapons, we later got the Game Boy as a result from the inspiration they got from MB.
Cause and effect.
Yeah, exactly.
For,
So we can thank the American Civil War for the Game Boy.
for
Wonderful.
gaming innovations, my nomination isn't so much like responsible for the creation of gaming, because I think that's kind of an easy one to always go towards.
Okay.
I'm thinking looking in gaming itself that has changed something from what it was to now becoming the norm, and that is internal saves.
Okay.
A
Internal
save game
saves.
function.
Hmm.
I think that is one of the biggest innovations, because it moved us all away from the password-based system that most consoles were using, or if not all of them. Arcade cabinets obviously only saved high scores; they didn't save game progress.
Mm-hmm.
And we finally got a way of being able to play a game and turn it off before completing it, and then coming back to complete without having to put in a
That's a
48 character password.
To be fair, again, I think that's also a really good shout, because it provided a way of changing the way that games were developed, because they were developed to be walked away from and then come back to.
Yeah.
I mean, without something like that, you'd never have Zelda.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you'd never have Metroid. You'd never have a ridiculous amount of games.
Yeah.
Like, it's absolutely amazing. Got anything else to say about that, do you think?
Not so much related to saves, but obviously another big innovation was narrative, putting narrative into games.
Yeah.
But it's where did the narrative actually start? Does it start with the characters? So when you got the likes of Pac-Man, is that when narrative began?
Arguably Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
But then there's a game just before Donkey Kong which it clearly ripped off to some degree. I can't remember what it's called, but it also involves skyscrapers and monkeys. I can't think what it is.
Before
So
Donkey Kong.
yeah, but it's Nintendo brainwashing, isn't it? American Nintendo brainwashing. I can't remember the game, but there's a game similar to Donkey Kong which came just before it.
Yeah.
But we repeatedly get told Nintendo did this, Nintendo did that, when that usually someone else has done it before. It's just not been as talked about and publicised.
Okay. Alright, can I put out my shout now?
Yes.
Okay. I think I'm going to put out there, okay, that the internet and internet gaming. is a massive innovation in gaming, because not only does it change the way that a lot of games are played, but it also changes the way that games are purchased and how they're even sold. Because people are selling games and then selling updates for games. They don't even have to finish games anymore before they release them on a disc.
That's very
smart. I think that's a really interesting... Personally, I think that's really interesting. It hasn't necessarily changed things for the better.
But once again...
But it's a massive innovation that has changed the way that games are seen and sold.
You could do this without the internet, though, because obviously the Satellaview, part of the Super Nintendo in Japan, was done via satellite broadcasting. And then you had the Sega channel as well from the Mega Drive, which was done over the phone. And I don't know if you know about this, but even the Atari 2600 was meant to have a dial-up service for it. So you could download basically games over the phone.
What I'm saying
in
is
the 70s.
The internet made it easier.
Yes.
It just literally made it click of a
fingers. But those ideas were there before.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I think like the internet has changed the way, and also it changed the way games are played as well, because now a lot of games are played with friends that aren't in the same room, or against friends that aren't in the same room. And I think that has possibly changed gaming more than anything else.
Speaking of the internet, I don't know if you know this, all, but is it true that Al Gore invented it? I've heard that before.
No.
Who invented the internet then? Was it
Tim Berners-Lee?
It was Cambridge and Harvard, wasn't it?
Tim Berners-Lee.
But what was Al Gore to do with it? Because I've heard him say lots of times
I'm
that
not
he
sure
apparently
his
invented
specific, I'm not sure of his specific role in the development of the internet. I really am not.
But you think he's lying when he says he invented the internet?
He may have had something to do with it, but I know the man that commonly attributed to is Tim Berners-Lee, who's an Englishman.
Not Al Gore then.
Okay.
So it was invented by an Englishman at Cambridge, yes?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, got you.
Okay. Anyway, I think that was enough of our rambling for this episode. We want to know your opinions. What are your opinions on the biggest innovations in gaming ever? I'd like to thank Ben Sainty for this question, and it's really given us something to think about, I suppose. Would you like to do a proper outro?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching another exciting episode of Top Hat Chat on the Top Hat Chat YouTube channel, or if you're watching live on Twitch right now, make sure you give the Top Hat Chat YouTube channel a subscribe to, because there's lots of content you might want to sift through in the backlog, just like this, in which you can enjoy at your own leisure. Also, if you want to support the Top Hat Trust on Patreon, then you can find that by typing in Patreon and look for Top Hat Chat and giving us a nice little what's a good word for it?
Kickback.
Monetary
Incentive.
Tax dodge. Cheerio.
I'd like to give a huge shout out to Ben Sainty and Michael Keneally, as well as all of our other patrons. You help keep this channel going. We appreciate your support. And if anybody else would like to donate to this channel, there is a link in our description.